I started my sales career when I was 20. And what I was taught was to do cold calling and door knocking. That was in the early 90s. And if you're a sales manager today and that's your company strategy, is to send a whole bunch of 100% salespeople out into the market, this episode is for you. If you're the salesperson in the company, on the team, selling door to door, door knocking, old school, in hot, humid weather, cold, crispy weather, or out here in the Vegas heat at 117 degrees, I got something I want to share with you. And that is, you as a salesperson are 100% self-employed. A few months ago, we bought a house. Since then, we've had 15 salespeople knock on our door. My man Romario was one of these people. Romario, if you're listening, this is for you. We had this conversation for about an hour and a half at my house one day. And I decided to put this on the podcast because my son, Jordan, if you're listening, this is also for you because we've had this conversation. Both of you are hardworking salespeople. You're both hustlers. You're both committed to success in your careers. And all I want to share with you today is a different perspective of how you can leverage your time better. If you're a first time here to this show, I'm Darrell Evans. I'm the host of the Mindshift podcast. Today, I'm the co-founder and CEO of a digital marketing agency called Yoko Local. And I'm the founder of the Mindshift Inner Circle. And I, again, started my career selling door to door. That being said, something happened. I get a knock on my door one day and we've got a ring on the door. And the ring camera showed me that it was somebody I didn't know and definitely wasn't somebody I was expecting. And I was cooking dinner. So I stopped what I was doing. Don't ask me why, but I went ahead and opened the door and it was a gentleman and he was selling solar. I said, I'm not interested. I'm in the middle of cooking dinner. Come back next week. Of course, most of the people before him didn't come back because I told him the same thing. And the reality is he showed up the following week on a Friday at about 3 o'clock. And I had to keep my word because when I saw him on the ring camera, I said to myself, okay, he's doing his job. If he hadn't shown back up, I shouldn't open the door, but I did. What I didn't know was gonna happen was we ended up in about a 90-minute conversation. And I feel like God just blessed that conversation because A, he was open to listening. B, I guess God just put it on my heart to share with him. And I think that I had been sharing it with my son. I learned it myself as an early young salesperson that led to what I did in entrepreneurship and digital marketing and sales over the last 21 years online. So let me jump in. I don't want to keep you here all day. What I want to start with, number one, is this idea that if you're out selling door to door, and you don't get paid unless you sell, you, my friend, are self-employed. And if you're the manager or the sales lead of the teams that are sending people out, I want you to hear this as well because maybe the old way that you've been doing it isn't quite as effective. You see, when I got taught the sales game, it was taught to me as a numbers game. Like just do the numbers. Well, when I was talking to this gentleman that day, we had a little conversation about how many doors he might knock on in a given day. And my memory says it was about 60. I asked him, I said, how many doors get opened? And he said it was about 15. So you're out now for hours knocking on 60 doors and about 15 get opened. I said, how many engaged conversations do you have? He said about 5. Now, I'm not sure if that's good or bad for what you do or on your team, what you do. But one thing that was interesting throughout his entire sales pitch, and this is me not knocking on the pitch, but it was something that I've noticed every single time I still encounter someone who's selling a product or service door to door. And it is, they were only concerned with the pitch. They weren't concerned with me as the buyer. They were only concerned with proving to me that the product or service mattered and that I needed to take advantage of it today. Well, my friend, what I want to share with you first thing about this idea that, and this is my philosophy, I'm not saying it's your philosophy, I'm saying it served me well during the days that I was selling real estate and into my mortgage career and through the window of time that I did financial services. Because in those cases, I had to start from scratch and I only got paid when my customer got a result and they bought the product or service. So this is one-on-one experience. In my mortgage career alone, jumping out of the digital marketing space, I did well over 1,700 mortgages, which means I probably did 4x or 5x that many consultations. So I've had a lot of face-to-face selling experience before my digital career took off. So let me give you tip number one. Tip number one, when you're cold calling, cold knocking, reaching cold prospects, even in digital marketing today, the first thing you must remember is a lot of you are still being taught, or maybe not exactly this framework, but you're being taught to qualify the buyer through what's called the BANT formula. B-A-N-T. It was created by IBM way back in the day. Sales organizations today still talk about it, and the B stands for budget. You're qualifying whether the person has the budget to buy the product or service that you're selling. The second thing is the A, which in BANT stands for authority. Are you the decision maker? Are you the person who can make the buying decision? The N stands for need. You are sitting there with your prospecting script trying to determine if I have a need for the product, or you're trying to sell me the need, which is what I still find today as the big problem. You're trying to sell me the need. You're not qualifying whether I have the need. And the last one is timing. You're considering the fact that since you're there, and since I opened the door, and since you have a quota, that you must close me today. So fast forward the story. I see this all the time. By the way, this happens on the telephone, still in my agency. We get so many calls and solicitations at our agency. It's the same thing on phone calls or door knocking or really any cold solicitation. I'm gonna go one step further. And it's one of the reasons why I'm very selective about when I choose to go to a networking event. Because so many of you go to networking events thinking that everyone in the event wants to buy something or they're your prospect. They are not. I'm gonna get back to the idea of being self-employed right now. Here's what I thought about. Here's what struck up the conversation that made it go a little further. I wasn't a buyer of the product that day. I wasn't a buyer next week. I wasn't a buyer a year from now. I'm not sure I'm ever a buyer of that specific product, even though it might look like I'm an ideal prospect. Here's why. That product isn't in my ecosystem of consideration. There are 3 stages people go through: awareness, consideration, decision. By the way, we teach this online, and this is how we develop successful digital marketing campaigns. Buyers go through an awareness stage, a consideration stage, and a decision stage. And what most of you don't know is there's 2 other stages that are involved in the process, which I'll save for another video. But one of them is the unaware stage, which means people are unaware that they are even going to encounter the problem that your product or service can solve. And the last part is your product aware. But I'm gonna leave that for a different video. I've done plenty of podcasts about the 5 stages of awareness. Let's get back to this conversation for that day. So now we've finished this conversation and the pitch goes nowhere. But because I am who I am, I inquired, so you've just spent all this time here and you're gonna walk away with nothing. And then you're gonna go on to your next meeting and you're gonna walk away with either a sale or nothing. Would you like to know a better way of making sure that you can build your business long-term? Because again, if you don't get paid unless you sell something, wouldn't it make sense that you would have at least got my information so that you can follow up, not just know the address where you can come back and knock on my door again in the future? So I'm gonna reflect back on a conversation I had with an HVAC company, an air conditioning company. They were speaking with our agency about helping them with Google Ads and social media. And I first gave them this strategy, and it's something that I've thought about ever since. I shared it with this gentleman that day. I've also shared it with other folks that are in the cold door knocking / sales world. One thing that's really interesting is if you know that you're gonna knock on 50 doors that day, and if you know you're only gonna get 15 people to open the door, and if you know you're only gonna get 5 quality conversations, wouldn't it be very interesting? By the way, because 15 opened the door and you only got 5 quality conversations, what you missed out is the opportunity on the 10 that didn't give you a quality conversation. I'm gonna jump back to the HVAC company, the air conditioning company. If you're not familiar, in most parts of the United States, air conditioning companies go through a season where they make a lot of their money during the summer, during the hotter months. Sometimes if you're in the winter, if you're in winter cities where they have very crisp winters and they have basements and there's a furnace and things like that, there may be some other opportunities, but I'm here on the West Coast of the United States, so we work with a lot of people on the West Coast. Most of the months where they make all their capital, they make all their cash, they make all their sales is in the summer. And then they go through sort of a famine period between, say, October, November, when things get cold, all the way through till, call it March. Well, what they would tend to do is send people out with these door flyers that would invite people to get a free air conditioning, sorry, not a free, they would invite them to get a $59 air conditioning checkup. Get the checkup in the off season so you're prepared when it comes into main season. And what I remember asking this particular owner, I said, so what happens when all you do is drop the flyer on the door and that's it? He was like, yeah. Well, do you knock on the door? He's like, yeah, but most people don't open the door. And I said, well, wouldn't you prefer that whoever got the flyer, they had an opportunity to be known to you, not just you know the address and you drop the flyer? You're already spending money on the time to send the person out there. You're spending money on the creative brochure. Wouldn't you like a better way to get people to raise their hand, even if they weren't interested in the $59 checkup that day? And he said, yeah. I said, well, listen, why don't you make it a two-part flyer? You make the front part of the flyer about the $59 checkup, and you make the back part of the flyer, or the flip side of the postcard, an invitation that says, download our free report on the 5 ways to be more energy efficient in your home. And then send them back to your website to get a free special report and allow them to give you their first name and their email address. Now you've got them at least on your email address, right? Now, I remember reporting, the owner came back to me and said they implemented that strategy and the next season was bananas. Now, I don't have the exact number, so I won't make any numbers up, but he said that one conversation changed how their sort of off-season marketing ran. Why did it work, and why did I suggest that as well to the gentleman who was knocking on my door when he was trying to sell me solar? Well, you're already doing the work. The problem is, even though you were talking to someone who had the budget, even though you were talking to someone who could make the authoritative decision, obviously I'm not the only decision maker in my home, but I'm one of them, and we agree on most things, I had no need today. It doesn't mean I'll never need it or want it in the future, but it doesn't matter what you say today, I have no need and my timing isn't working for you. So if you are using the BAT formula, half of your equation is done. And most of the salespeople that knock on my door, most people that call my agency, most people that cold call me, they don't care about anything other than their formula, anything other than their script. And what I'm suggesting to you, just like we do in digital, just like every piece of traffic we run from Google, from Meta, everyone's not ready to buy today. That's why you get website clicks without conversions. And people are like, oh, well, I'm not getting enough leads. I'm not getting enough sales. They get all jammed up. Well, that's the way it works. So if you're self-employed, which is my argument as a 100% salesperson, every situation or role, real estate, financial services, lending, and it doesn't mean you have to have your name on the building, doesn't mean you have to write your own check, but if you don't get paid unless you make a sale, here are a few steps that I'd encourage you to take. Number one, if you're gonna spend time with a homeowner, let's just say, to stick to this door-to-door example, you ought to have something helpful to offer that person in exchange for permission to stay in touch in the future. Not just simply, can I come back next week? It's just not leveraged behavior. Number two, I told this young man, I said, listen, do you know that once you've knocked on 150, 200, 250, 300, 350, 400 doors, which you're going to do anyway, and you get the same percentage of people that open, eventually you're going to have an email database or build your own internal CRM so that you can build a relationship with these people so that if and when they're ready a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, they're gonna know who you are because you can start to build your own email list. You can now build your own email sequence. It's the first thing I did in 2003. 2003 was the first time I started using digital marketing, and it was allowing me to stay in touch with people who were not today buyers, but who might be future buyers. But rather than me running around knocking on their door every day just to waste time, I would simply use this mechanism called email. The third tip that I gave this young man was, did you know that once you have an email list of significant size, call it more than 100, probably 200 or 300, which I'm not gonna say is gonna happen overnight, but it is something that if you put thought process to it, it'll happen. You can then set up your own personal brand Facebook page on Facebook or Instagram, and not only post content about your service, about your product, about your expertise, but you can also run ads to stay top of mind in front of that audience on your own dime. You know, when I talk to a lot of salespeople, they're calling into a region, they're door knocking into a region or a territory. Do you know that for $1 a day, and don't tell me if you're 100% commission, you can't afford one whole dollar per day. Because I walk around, I see you drinking Monster energy drinks, they cost $3.50, right? I see you spending the money. So you can spend $1 a day on your own product branding, your own marketing, your own brand awareness in advance of. I'll share this one idea that I shared with a real estate company, and then I'll bring this to a close. The idea here is, if you're going to do the work anyway, you might as well do leveraged work and tie in your offline work with digital opportunities. And that's what we do all day in our agency. We take tons of businesses who used to do it the old traditional way. And let's talk about this real estate example, and I'll bring this to a close. I was invited to a real estate company, and we were talking about how to brand and grow the brand awareness of this real estate firm and all of its agents that were inside of its firm. And of course, agents still to this day are doing open houses. I'm not saying they're bad, I'm just saying that's what they were doing. So I said, if I had started back in real estate today, at that time, I had been out of the industry about 8 years. I said, if I was starting back in real estate today and I was going to do an open house, I would do it completely differently than we ever were taught to do it back in the day when I was in the game. Here's what I would do. I would make sure that wherever that listing was, that I was doing the open house. By the way, I don't have to be the listing agent. I could be the buyer's agent. Doesn't matter whether I own the listing or if I'm just supporting the listing and trying to market and sell it. I would run ads 1 mile or 2 miles around that house. I wouldn't just go around door knocking and passing out flyers, which is what I still see being done today. I wouldn't just put the signs on the corner and in the desert and around the shopping center. Although you still do it, but that's not all I would do. Because what you're taking the thought process of is that everybody's gonna see those signs. What I would do is I would run my $1 a day ad strategy, $1 a day, literally. I would target a 1 mile radius or maybe 2 maximum around that property. And I would literally just let those dollars do the work, okay? So the point of all of this is that if you're the salesperson and all you're doing is the thing they taught you, you're leaving a lot of money on the table. And I know firsthand, let me raise my hand. I know what it's like to go through feast and famine cycles as a commissioned salesperson and as a self-employed entrepreneur. I know what the roller coaster looks like. I know what it's like to eat ramen every day. I know what it's like to eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches every day. I know what it's like to have just enough money in your car, in gas in your car, to get to the corner of the neighborhood where you've got to go prospecting. You're hoping that car makes it back home. I know what it's like to be behind on the power bill and the phone bill. I know what it's like. Trust me, I know what it's like. I know what it's like because when you're committed to your success, when you're committed to a bigger financial outcome, when you're committed to betting on yourself, these are the risks. And we all take it. If you're self-employed at 100%, if you're a commissioned salesperson at 100%, I know what the risks are. What I'm concerned about is this old school sales mentality that is still teaching young salespeople. And by the way, some people may not like what I'm about to say, but I did say this to this young man standing on my porch, and I want to say that I've told my son Jordan, is that in the end, and if you're the corporate employer, you may or may not agree with this, but this is the way I feel about it. If you're the salesperson doing the door knocking, following the script and the playbook exactly the way they've taught you, then you're a part of the numbers game. And all I'm encouraging you, whoever you are right now listening to this, is that there is a better, more strategic way to not only accomplish your goals and meet your quota, but to build a brand around your personal energy and effort. And by the way, if you're the corporation, you could be adding this strategy in holistically to support your in the field 100% sales reps. So a bit of a different episode for me, but I was really ticked off by and I'm ticked off in general about cold sales calls. I'm just, why have we not evolved? It's 2024, we're heading into 2025, and we're still doing stuff that I was taught in my early 20s, in the 90s. We can do better. If you're the salesperson, you've got to start thinking beyond making sales and start building a personal brand for yourself. You got to start thinking about leverage. You're all walking around with the phone. Half the time, you're not even thinking about how many opportunities you could be doing to create content around your brand. You're just thinking, make a sale, make a sale, make a sale. And it's just a short-lived way, and it's always going to be a struggle. Sales come, sales go, sales come in, they don't close, they don't get financed, all the stuff. You're already doing the work. And Mr. Sales Manager, Miss Sales Manager, company that has this group of salespeople together, If you're ready to evolve your sales process and tie in digital with your on the ground work, then reach out to our agency and let's talk about a strategy that we've been employing for years for traditional businesses that still do offline sales work, whether it's corporate retreats, whether it's conventions, whether it's trade shows, whether it's door knocking. We've helped hundreds and hundreds of companies transition their offline sales strategy, combining it with a digital sales strategy. And in 2025, it's going to be hard for you to survive without one, especially in this age of AI. Okay? Down below, if you haven't done so already, hit the like, hit the follow button, subscribe to the show. The Mindshift Podcast is here to serve and help you shift your mind so you can shift your results. My name is Darrell Evans. You can connect with me anywhere on social at Mr. Darrell Evans. And just keep in mind that you're just one shift away from the break that you've been looking for, and maybe that shift happened today. I'll see you later.